In 1947, an astronomer in a remote Armenian observatory pointed his telescope at a cluster of stars and accidentally proved that the sun is going to die. His name was Viktor Ambartsumian, and that single discovery should have made him one of the most celebrated scientists alive. Instead, the Soviet government tried to bury it. Not because his science was wrong, but because in Stalin's USSR, the death of the sun was a political crime. And the reason why tells you more about how power works than any history book ever could. Our sun has about 5 billion years of fuel left. When it runs out, the core will collapse, the outer layers will swell outward, and the sun will balloon into what astronomers call a red giant, a bloated, dying star so large it will swallow Mercury, Venus, and Earth whole. Every building, every ocean, every fossil, every trace of every civilization that ever existed vaporized inside the body of a dying star. Not speculation, settled physics, confirmed by decades of observation and nuclear theory. And the man who set that confirmation in motion was working from a mountaintop in Soviet Armenia with a telescope and a notebook. Viktor Ambartsumian built the Byurakan Observatory in 1946, high in the Armenian mountains, surrounded by nothing but rock and sky. Thin air, dark skies, and minimal light pollution made it perfect for astronomy. But the location had another advantage Ambartsumian probably appreciated just as much. Byurakan sat very, very far from Moscow. Several hundred kilometers of rough terrain separated him from Communist Party officials, and that distance gave him room to think without ideological supervision. What he was about to discover would have made those officials extremely uncomfortable. 1 year later, Ambartsumian identified something no one had formally described before, a phenomenon he called stellar associations. Picture loose groups of massive, extremely hot stars, the O and B-type stars that burn blue-white and radiate energy at staggering rates. What made these groups special was their movement. Each cluster was expanding, drifting apart from a common point of origin, which meant they had formed together, recently, in cosmic terms. Millions of years ago, not billions. These were newborn stars by the standards of the universe, and that single observation cracked open one of the biggest questions in all of astrophysics. If stars are being born right now, in our own galaxy, in clusters we can observe and measure, then stars are not eternal. Anything with a beginning also has an end. Follow the logic all the way down. Star formation requires star death. Hydrogen fusing into helium under crushing gravitational pressure is a finite process. Burn through the fuel, and the star dies. Small stars fade into white dwarfs. Massive stars explode as supernovae. Medium-sized stars like our sun bloat into red giants before collapsing into dense, cooling remnants. Ambartsumian did not just discover young stars. He proved that every star in the sky, including the one keeping us alive right now, is on a countdown timer. Now here is where this story takes a turn most people never see coming. During the 1940s and 1950s, science in the Soviet Union did not operate the way it operates in most of the world today. Every scientific theory, every published paper, every university lecture had to pass through an ideological filter called Dialectical Materialism. This was the official state philosophy, and it made very specific claims about the universe. Matter is eternal. Space and time are infinite. No beginning, no end, no expiration date on anything. Any theory suggesting otherwise, any hint of a cosmic starting point or a final conclusion, earned the labels idealistic, bourgeois, or reactionary. In Stalin's Soviet Union, those labels did not just damage reputations. Careers vanished overnight. Scientists disappeared. Entire research programs were dismantled because the findings contradicted party doctrine. Western astronomers were building the case for what we now call the Big Bang. The idea that the universe exploded from a single point of infinite density roughly 14 billion years ago. Soviet ideologists saw that as dangerously close to the biblical creation story. An expanding universe with a definitive starting moment looked, to them, like science smuggling religion through the back door. So they pushed a competing model, a steady-state universe that had always looked the way it looks now, eternal, unchanging, perfectly aligned with communist philosophy. Ambartsumian's stellar associations detonated a bomb right in the middle of all that. If the universe is supposed to be eternal and unchanging, you cannot have new stars forming and old stars dying. Birth and death mean change. Change means evolution, a cosmos with a direction, a timeline, a start, and a finish. Solar death in particular was a nightmare for Soviet ideologists. Communist Party leadership had built its entire identity around an eternal, progressive future. Communism was supposed to be the final stage of human civilization, lasting forever. A dying sun put an expiration date on forever. 5 billion years from now, the light keeping the workers' paradise alive will go out, and no amount of ideology can stop it. So the suppression machine kicked into gear. V.T. Ter-Oganezov, one of the most powerful ideological enforcers in Soviet astronomy, led organized campaigns against scientists whose work contradicted the approved view. Astronomers who supported stellar evolution faced career-ending consequences. Published papers were rejected outright or forced to include disclaimers reaffirming dialectical materialism before the actual science could be discussed. Textbooks were censored. Researchers learned to couch their findings in ideologically safe language or risk being purged the same way Soviet biologists had been destroyed during the Lysenko affair just a few years earlier, when an entire generation of geneticists was silenced because their science offended the party line. Moscow's message was blunt. The universe is eternal, the sun is eternal, and if your telescope says otherwise, find a different telescope. Ambartsumian survived. Geography played a role. Working from Byurakan, hundreds of kilometers from Kremlin oversight, gave him a buffer that scientists in Moscow and Leningrad never had. Strategy mattered too. He was careful about framing his findings in ways that did not directly provoke ideological gatekeepers while still advancing the science. But most importantly, his work was simply too good to dismiss. Astronomers around the world recognized stellar associations immediately. Observational evidence piled up from dozens of independent telescopes. Over time, even Soviet science had to bend under that weight. Here is the part that should make your head spin. Every equation, every piece of mathematics, every understanding of nuclear reactions and gravitational forces that the Soviet Union used to build its nuclear weapons program and launch Sputnik into orbit in 1957 relied on the exact same physics that proved the sun will die. Fusion is fusion. Gravity is gravity. You cannot celebrate the equations when they put a satellite in space and then reject those same equations when they put an expiration date on your star. Soviet leadership wanted to pick and choose which physics to believe, and the universe does not offer that option. By the 1960s and 1970s, suppression started crumbling. Iosif Shklovsky, another Soviet astrophysicist, published a landmark book called Stars: Their Birth, Life, and Death. And the title alone tells you how far the scientific community had moved. Birth, life, and death. Not eternal existence, not unchanging permanence. A full life cycle, printed in a Soviet textbook, distributed across universities throughout the USSR. Ambartsumian's work had won, not through protest or political maneuvering, but through the slow, grinding pressure of evidence that no ideology can hold back forever. Today, Viktor Ambartsumian is a national hero in Armenia. Streets bear his name. Stamps carry his face. Byurakan Observatory still operates in those same mountains where he first spotted expanding star clusters 8 decades ago, and his contributions to astrophysics are taught in universities on every continent. His theory of stellar associations became the foundation for modern understanding of star formation, galactic evolution, and the life cycle of every star in the observable universe, including the one rising outside your window right now. 5 billion years from now, our sun will run out of hydrogen. Its core will contract, the outer layers will expand, and this ordinary yellow dwarf star will become a red giant, large enough to erase every planet in the inner solar system. One man proved this would happen, and an entire superpower tried to stop the idea from spreading, not because the math was wrong, but because the truth was politically inconvenient. Our sun does not care about politics. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see more amazing videos like this.